Excited to be here and visit with all of you. And I want to start out by saying thank you. Thank you to all of you in the districts for the work that you do. You're an extension of so many of our state programs, coming from ODA, knowing that you're the boots on the ground for the Ag Water Quality Program. You're the boots on the ground for conservation work. And as we look forward to, new work coming at us, we'll be looking to all of you to continue to help us move those things forward in your local communities and with landowners. So I want to talk a little bit about some of our core grant programs. I want to talk about some of the exponential growth that OWEB has been through in this last year since I started, and some of those new programs and what they mean. And then maybe a little bit about some of the things that are coming at us. So I'm just going to take you back to July. At our July board meeting, the board did a reallocation of their funding plan because we had a big chunk of PCSRF money come in. And the good news for the districts, and some of you probably have your contracts already, is the board allocated an additional $2 million to watershed councils and soil and water conservation districts for capacity grants. And this really was to recognize some of the challenges that you all are having in terms of supply chain and inflation and other things that have happened. In addition, creating a little more opportunity, the board allocated an additional $8.7 million to our open solicitation programs. And that breaks down to about 3.5 going to restoration, 2.5 for technical assistance, 1.5 for land and water acquisitions, and then about $500,000 for stakeholder engagement. There was also some money added for the partnership. So for OECD and now C and Colt. And then we also moved around and added $3 million to the Focus Investment Program, which allowed us to add an extra fifth, if you're familiar with that program in this current round. The board also funded 5 new fifths at that meeting. So it was a significant investment into the future and really acknowledged the strength of the partnerships that are out there in the community and working on really important work. So in terms of new programs and exponential growth, the Oregon legislature has invested about $50 million in general fund. 50. 50.
All
right. Some of that came in during the 2021 legislative session in emergency response money for fire to deal with restoration work from the 2020 fires. There was a big package that came to us in December of 21 in the special session, and that included $11.5 million for drought funding. Those funds were targeted in a couple of different ways. Some of them were targeted to areas specific, like Klamath Falls and Jefferson County. There was some money in there for irrigation improvement, a little bit of money for irrigation improvement statewide. And those grants have been stood up and have gone through at least one cycle at this point. There was $10 million invested for water acquisition, in addition to the traditional water acquisition money coming out of Measure 76. And that program is kind of our last one of these new programs to come in. We should have that stood up in January and have an offering at that point. There was an additional money came in for the 2021 fires. And then the big investment, and Ron mentioned this, $5 million in the Oregon Ag Heritage Fund. And that money really has shown great promise in terms of our ability to leverage it with our friends at NRCS and do really good work. That offering closed yesterday, so I'm not sure yet what it looks like, but there was a lot of interest as it was open. We worked with a lot of different people around the offering to do some tweaking around the edges. In our traditional acquisition programs and under Measure 76, there are some requirements that we have to meet because of how Measure 76 was written. And we had carried some of that over into the Oregon Ag Heritage Program. But as we had conversations, we realized that some of it could have created a barrier to bringing people into the program. And so we did some tweaking around the edges with working with the partners. And I think we ended up in a spot that people were pretty comfortable with, and hopefully we'll be able to maximize the benefit of this first investment. And we are hoping that the legislature will make another investment in 2023. The agency has a budget request. I won't use the acronyms for it in our budget for $10 million to fill that back up so that we can continue to leverage that money here in Oregon and really invest in the value of working land. So timing wise, this is an interesting time for us at the agency. We submitted our agency request budget on September 1st. And if you're not familiar with the state budgeting process, it falls into kind of three parts. So we start out with the agency request budget, and that's our chance to ask for everything that we want. And then it rolls forward to the governor's office, and the governor creates the governor's recommended budget. We won't expect a governor's recommended budget until probably February 1st because of the transition. Normally it would be early December. And then it gets rolled through the legislative process. And lots of things can happen there. And that's ultimately what we come out with on the other side for what we'll have for spending for the following year. We have a pretty big budget request from an agency perspective in 2022. And this is really recognizing some of the pressures that have been on the agency over time in terms of our core programs, core staffing. So we've requested some additional management positions to help spread the workload, hopefully provide some better customer service, because we saw in our most recent customer service surveys, our scores had gone down. Some of that I think reflects COVID. Some of it reflects the downsizing of the agency during 2020 and 2021 and getting behind and not turning things around quite as fast as we have in the past. And then I think it also really reflects the desire to have more contact with the staff at OWEB working directly with many of you and our other partners. So it's a large ask. We'll see how that works out longer term, because it's a long process and a long ride to the end. And you all have been through it multiple times. But once the governor's recommended budget comes out, that's what the agency will support. And we don't get to make those additional asks that we might have had. So at that point, you know, we look to our partners and advocates to really talk about what you need to help us support you and all of your work. Let's see. OWEB just completed our October board meeting. See, I get my years and my months mixed up. Time goes too fast. Last week, and the board made some significant investments in terms of open solicitation, and also a really important one-time commitment in terms of helping with recovery post-dam removal in Klamath. The board has committed $15 million for restoration work post-dam removal there to help in that area. I would be remiss if I didn't talk to you guys about participating in the board meetings. The board loves to hear from stakeholders. It's really your chance to engage with them and talk about the opportunities that you see and the challenges that you're facing. We're spending time with the board right now over our next several board meetings doing a lot of OWEB 101. And so a little bit about back to the basics. We have a lot of new board members, and half the exec staff is new. And so we're spending a lot more time talking about what's at the core of the work that we do at OWEB. So this is a really great chance for all of you to engage in those conversations and participate. And I think one of the the overarching messages that we heard at our October board meeting was the need for capacity and really some of the struggles that our local partners are having dealing with capacity, with workforce, with cost increases in terms of contractors, et cetera. And so we'll take up, I think, capacity. We're going to do a capacity 101 at our January board meeting to talk about where we've been. And then I think it'll give the board an opportunity to talk about where they want to go in the future as they build their next spending plan, which they will adopt in July. So this is a really great time for all of you to really be engaging and thinking about, you know, the opportunities and working with the agency, looking for additional opportunities in some of those open solicitation and competitive grant programs. So I think I'll pause there and take questions at the end.
Yeah,
Is that the preference?
Mm-hmm.